Hello, everyone. I'm gonna go ahead and get things going here. Just doing a couple of quick maintenance. All right. Awesome. Oh, here we go. Thank you all for joining us today. We are super excited to have you with us for another fantastic webinar, especially on a topic and during Women's History Month. And so my name is Claire Holzowski, and I'm the Science Communication Specialist at the Alda Center for Communicating Science. And just before we begin, I'd love to take a moment and introduce you to the Alda Center's latest endeavor called The Link. The link is I'm gonna throw a link to the link in the chat here quick. It is a it's a platform that, science communication engagement platform that reviews, interprets, and shares insights from different areas of science. And that is, we are linking science communication research to practice to support kind of the larger community of individuals who are interested in science communication. So if you haven't already, please head over to the link, aldacenter.org/thelink to learn more. And today, I'm super excited to have this awesome panel of females with us today to speak about the gender gap and what can be done to overcome it. Special thank you to the Kavli Foundation for supporting this webinar. And before we begin, just a couple logistics that I have. Today, we are using the webinar format in Zoom. And so if, as we're listening to our panelists today speak, if any questions come up, please feel free to use the Q&A function. And we'll be able to get to as many questions as we can during the Q&A portion of our session. If you are having any technical troubles, please reach out to me. I have named myself the Alda Center, and I will assist you as best as I can. And then also we are recording today's session, officially starting now. And so a copy will be available at a later date if you do need to jump off at any point in time. I'm anticipating this conversation is going to be a really deep and engaging one. So it will be great to kind of check back in at certain points too. And so with that, I'm actually going to hand things over to today's moderator, Alix and Ambrico, if you want to come on, and I will give things to you.
Thank you, Claire. Welcome to this special webinar to celebrate Women's History Month. Productivity and performance is higher among workplaces that have true and strong gender diversity. Yet, despite this, women account for only 28% of the STEM workforce. Educational systems and organizations need to do more to address and combat gender imbalance. Only by taking action can we create and support a truly diverse and inclusive STEM workforce. My name is Alexandra Ambrico, and I am part of the inaugural cohort of the Master of Science in Science Communication program here at Stony Brook University. It is my pleasure to moderate today's session. My research seeks to understand and explore how female role models and mentorship in STEM, both in the classroom and in media and popular culture, have on female college students' likelihood and intention to pursue a career in STEM. As a researcher, I want to make STEM more diverse, equitable, and inclusive, and inspire the next generation of women in STEM. It's webinars like the one being held today that encourage the conversations and actions needed to do just that. I want to start by introducing our speakers. Dr. Christina Cho is a postdoctoral associate in immunobiology at Yale School of Medicine. Dr. Neysha Martinez-Orengo is a postdoctoral IRTA fellow at the National Institutes of Health. And Dr. Alix Dehayem is the coordinator of Women in STEM Leadership Program at the Alda Center. Together, we will discuss why the gender gap exists in STEM, why female representation in STEM matters, barriers that prevent women from entering STEM-related professions, what can be done to encourage more women to pursue studies and careers in these critical areas, and leadership and progression in the STEM sector. After their presentations, we will host a Q&A session. Please feel free to use the Q&A function in Zoom, and we will try to get to as many questions as possible. With that, I will now turn over the conversation to Dr. Christina Cho.
Hi, everybody. So excited to be here. It's such an honor to be a part of this program. I was actually introduced to the Alda Center through their Women in STEM Leadership Program, and I've worked with Dr. Dehayem through that program, and I was extremely excited to get this project started, and I'll talk about that in a second. But before I talk about my project, I just want to introduce myself a little bit more. I'm currently a postdoctoral research associate at Yale University School of Medicine in the Department of Immunobiology. I am a cancer biologist in training, and I'm currently working on understanding how the tumor microenvironment, or the environment that cancer cells reside, how that environment impacts the way tumors progress and develop, and also impacts the way they respond to different therapies. So the goal is to understand how the environment changes the way cancer cells respond to drugs, and how that prevents patients from really benefiting from all these amazing therapies that we have available. In addition to being very passionate and excited about the research that I do, I try to advocate as much as I can for more diversity, equity, and inclusion in academia and in the biological sciences. And it really stems from my own personal experiences as a first generation low income undergraduate and then a graduate student, and feeling kind of like an outsider. I never felt like I really belonged there. There was a lot of imposter syndrome that we hear that term a lot, but it's a lot more debilitating than people like to say. And now we have a name for it. But when I was in graduate school, we didn't really have a name for what that was. I just felt that there wasn't a lot of other people whose parents didn't attend college. There weren't a lot of people who had to rely on financial aid and work full time while going to undergrad, and had to suffer from bad grades, and then having to combat that idea that I'm lazy or not working hard enough because the grades weren't good. So there was a lot of people who just saw me as a graduate student, and so I should do well, but didn't know my background and didn't know the reasons behind why I might be struggling, either in my classes or my research. And there was no intention to understand, my background and how that might impact my productivity or my output, right? So that experience really put this place in my heart that I wanted to help other students who might be experiencing some of the similar feelings that I had. Which was that they might not be good enough to be there, or maybe there's a fear of failure, and because of that fear of failure, you're not pushing yourself as much as you could, or you've overpushed yourself, you've overworked yourself to kind of combat that stereotype that you might not be good enough, and then at the end you're not doing the best that you can because you're absolutely burnt out. So the project that I developed with my colleague and friend T. Baudry is this project called STEAM, and it is kind of a trifecta. So the main meat of it is STEAM, the podcast, and the idea of this podcast is to highlight and showcase other scientists, like women and underrepresented minorities in STEM and STEAM, sorry, can you give me 1 second, please? Terribly sorry, I have a shared office. I just needed to tell my colleagues I'm in the middle of something. So the point of this project is to have this podcast that will highlight and showcase scientists, women scientists and other underrepresented minorities in STEM plus the arts, to showcase who they are and their work, but also talk about their experiences of maybe being an outsider or maybe feeling some of the pressures of STEM and STEAM and not having the right resources to deal with those pressures. And so one of the things that I did outside of my research was work in this initiative called the Intersection Science Fellow Symposium. And part of that initiative was having a keynote speaker come in and talk about the most pertinent issues with the lack of diversity in biological sciences. And she mentioned this phrase, social capital, that I never heard before. And what social capital essentially is this network within your field of study or field of work that may provide you with emotional, mental, or even financial support to help you get through the career path that you've chosen, so that you don't feel alone, so that you feel like you have like a safety net even to help you bounce off when you do struggle with something. And the problem with people who are first generation or the people who are underrepresented is that you don't find people who are like you. You don't feel like you can relate. You don't feel connected to the people who are supposed to be your peers. And so it's hard to network with someone and form a relationship with someone that you don't identify with. And so it's really hard to build that network. So you lack that social capital, which is actually incredibly important for your success. And so STEAM hopes, the project STEAM hopes to create this social network or this social capital through this podcast. And by bringing in scientists who you might not necessarily see or envision as scientists, come and talk about who they are, what they went through, and how they've gained success, and provide some tools and tips on how to deal with some of these issues like imposter syndrome and burnout. And then at the same time, create a virtual network of scientists you might relate to. And along with the podcast, we're developing a website that will have this directory of the guest speakers so that people can actually contact one another and form this virtual network and support group and hopefully gain some social capital and eventually use that social capital to not just survive, but thrive in STEM and STEAM. And so, the project is, our goal is to launch the podcast in 2023. And we're currently in the works of developing the website, developing the social media platforms for publicity, and finalizing the episode list and creating a guest list. And we hope to have all of you engaged. We want input from all of you, and we'd love if you'd like to be a part of this project, whether as the virtual network or as a guest speaker. So please, keep your eyes open and ears peeled for STEAM to debut itself within the next 8 months on different social media platforms. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cho. I will now pass it on to Dr. Alix Dehayem.
Thank you, Alex. I'm going to share my screen. Can you see my slide? Okay.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Alix Dehayem. I am a trained nuclear physicist, and I was born and raised in Cameroon, where I fell in love with physics when I was only 15. And I got my master's degree in nuclear physics in 2000. And these are my classmates. We were very few because back then, nuclear physics was a scary field, even for boys. And after my master's, I got a great opportunity to pursue my PhD in Paris. It was a French government fellowship. So I got my PhD degree from the University of Paris South 11. It's called in French Université Paris Sud. And as a young researcher back then, I was interested on planetary molecules. And one of the projects I worked on was related to Cassini-Huygens mission. And Cassini-Huygens mission to Saturn was one of the most ambitious efforts in planetary space exploration ever mounted. And it was a great collaboration between NASA, the European Space Agency, and the Italian Space Agency. It was designed to shed light on many unsolved mysteries arising from previous observations, such as understanding chemical reaction occurring on Titan. And for a young researcher like me, it was amazing because I had the opportunity not only to collaborate, but to publish with researchers from renowned lab in the world, like Neysha, the Jet Propulsion Lab, the Pacific Northwest Lab, and many more in Europe. So this is one of the articles that we published. So in 2008, I decided to go back to Africa. First, I spent a year in Cameroon, where I come from, and work as a radiation and safety officer. Then I went to Kenya because of family reason, and I got position as a researcher in the Department of Physics, University of Nairobi, and it was a great opportunity for me to shift my research interests and focus more on things that matter for the community that I was in. So I work on characterizing high background radiation area in some of the region in Kenya. I develop nuclear forensics analysis method to combat nuclear terrorism. I also use physics for early diagnosis of diseases like cancer and malaria. So in terms of research, I was doing great. I was very happy. I was also doing a lot of teaching, supervising a PhD student and master's student, but I felt a need to advocate for more diversity and inclusion in my department, because when I joined in 2009, I was shocked to be the first female researcher, first lecturer with a PhD in that department since it was created in 1966. And back then we had only one female PhD student who happened to be a tutorial fellow. So overall, we were 2 females among 45 males, and less than 5% of our students, undergraduate and graduate combined, were females. So I've decided to start a difficult conversation of, more equity, more diversity, more inclusion in our department, and most importantly, they need to have a culture in the department that really help our female students to thrive. And one of the things I started a mentorship program to support our graduate and undergraduate female students. I got some financial support from an institution in Sweden called International Science Program. And on this slide, I'm with one of the very first master student that I co-supervise. She's also my mentee. And we were attending a conference in Turkey that was in 2011. And I'm also in the lab here with some of my undergraduate mentee, because it was also important for me to introduce my mentee to research very early on in their education path. And I also went to high schools in Kenya, in East Africa, and elsewhere. talk to girls, mentor them, introduce them to STEM. I also invite them to my lab to see what I do as a researcher, because I think early exposure is paramount. While doing that, I met incredible women in STEM. Some of them are my mentors. I also met incredible men allies, and together we mentor more than 10,000 girls and female. And some of these women, we created a network called the Eastern Africa Network for Women in Basic Sciences to promote equal opportunity in basic sciences, and we are now represented in 6 countries. So my passion for science, my love for physics, and also my willingness to continue to advocate for women in STEM empowerment and more diversity, equity, and inclusion in STEM brought me to Stony Brook, brought me to the Alda centers, where I'm so happy and privileged to coordinate the Alda Center's Women in STEM Leadership Program. And the program is a donor-funded initiative which empowers women and underrepresented groups from all over the United States to rise to decision-making position in the STEM field. And participants go through a series of professional development workshops, enjoy ongoing networking opportunities, and are provided the ability to apply for funds to self-styled projects supporting minority in STEM, like the project that Dr. Christina is implementing. So far, we've designed strong curriculum for online live workshops and asynchronous activities in between. 160 women from a wide range of STEM fields across the United States have participated in the program, and we've offered them the opportunity to strengthen their leadership and communication skills and connect with other like-minded professionals to create a lasting supportive network and long-term bonds. So far, 3 funded empowerment projects are being implemented, all designed to work with school-age children and 2 specifically targeting underserved community. 4 projects are on the process of being sponsored, and Christina's project is one of them. So I think I'm going to stop here, but before, we are accepting application for our spring 2022 session. So please, if you want to know more and find out how to apply, visit our webpage. You can also direct email me, and we're going to put the link to the webpage and my email in the chat so that you can reach out to me and also share this great information for anyone around you who could benefit. This is the team behind the Women in STEM Leadership Program. And well, thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Dehayem. I will now introduce Dr. Martinez-Orengo. And just to let everyone know that there is a link in the chat, which will bring you to the Alda Center We STEM program.
Thank you, Alexandra, and thank you for the invitation and for this opportunity to share with these fantastic panelists. My name is Naisha, and I want to share just a little bit of my background and my story from childhood up to date. So I am a Caribbean girl. I was born in Puerto Rico, and I am the child of a single mother raised by my grandparents. And I remember starting to get interested into science when I was like in 6th grade. So you can imagine when people started to notice, you know, my family, my friends, when they started to notice that I was interested in science, the first thing they told me, okay, so you're going to become a doctor, right? But you know that they meant a doctor in medicine. That was basically what I knew about science. If you like science, you're going to be a doctor in medicine or a nurse. That's the other option. So that was my goal. So I tried to get my good grades. I went, to high school. And while in high school, there was this one teacher who one day called me and gave me an application for a summer research internship. And, I filled it out, I got accepted. So I went and spent a summer in a real lab, right? So that was my first real research experience with my new mentor to me, who was a white male. Remember, I'm in Puerto Rico, and I have this new mentor now teaching me about research, who is coming from the United States, Dr. Porter, who I admire, and I'm so grateful for all the things I learned from him. But I describe him physically so that you get to understand that from kindergarten to 12th grade, I never had any contact or any, interaction with a female scientist, nor a Puerto Rican scientist, just Dr. Porter at that time. So basically, I enjoyed the experience. It was a fantastic experience, but I didn't really felt like I was a scientist or I could be a scientist. So basically, I took it as an experience and then continued with my goal, which was to become a doctor in medicine. So then eventually I applied to, I went to college, with my goal set. And then when I was like in third year of undergrad school, then I met Dr. Alma Santiago. She gave me a few courses, immunology, genetics, and others, but she also had a lab. So I started doing like small research projects with her. I remember one of them was testing the toxicity of certain plants that people in Puerto Rico used to consume, as tea. And basically those teas were supposed to help you with relieve symptoms and cure diseases. So remember, I was raised by my grandparents. So that research was not only, my first nice experience of getting this research project, but also it had a link with my family and with culture and things that I grew up with. And then I started having doubts. So I was like, okay, so is it really medicine that I want to study? Because now I'm doing research and this seems very interesting. Like I can, I have all these questions and I can try to answer them through research. So then Dr. Alma Santiago, actually, she also gave me another application, just like that teacher when I was in high school. She gave me an application for this program at the NIH. It's Intramural NIH research opportunities. And I got accepted, and that was close to my final year in undergrad. And through that 1 week program, another opportunity came up, and that was the opportunity to do a postbac. So at that time, I accepted that opportunity because I was really not sure what I wanted to do next. And then I spent a few years doing research, learning more about research as a postbac, getting more workshops, getting more experiences and networking with scientists, until I finally decided and applied to grad school. And by the way, my postbac, I did it in Montana. It was NIH Montana. So you can imagine a girl from the Caribbean going all the way by herself to Montana, where they have basically winter all year round. But luckily for me, it was beautiful. It was a great experience as well. People there were lovely, and I was able to actually be also an author in a research paper during that experience. So it was really fantastic. So then I go back to Puerto Rico and I start grad school. They accepted 4 students, right? I come from it's a small institution. So that year they accepted 4 students. Out of those 4, 1 was female, and that was me. So you can imagine, right? 1 girl with the other 3 boys, but luckily for me, those boys were great. They are my not only peers in science, but my friends. And, in grad school, yes, I had a great experience. I did pretty well. I was studying HIV neuropathogenesis. So basically, I was focusing on one of the HIV viral proteins and looking more into molecular pathways and how they were involved in cognitive impairment. I got my fellowship from NIH as well, so my research was funded. I had fantastic opportunities, travel awards, so I was able to share my science and also network while in grad school. It was really a great experience. And I have to say that although I was the only female in that group, I did have female role models. So there were female professors and PIs. So I could definitely see myself then as probably, giving classes at someday, running my lab. However, again, when I was almost getting ready to defend my thesis, I had more doubts. And then I started to ask myself, okay, but there are more careers within STEM besides teaching, right? And running a lab. So what do I do next? And that's where I'm right now. So I started applying for postdoctoral positions. I got accepted at NIH. I'm currently a postdoctoral fellow under the mentorship of Dr. Diem. She's a radiologist, and she has been also a great role model. But then I also see new challenges here. And what I've noticed is that coming to a bigger institution, I do see that there is a gap and a lack of representation. While in grad school, I was in my little bubble, and I was lucky enough to have female role models. But here I see that we do need to do better, especially when you keep going up in that ladder in career-wise, like higher positions, you don't get to see as much females. So I started to think back about what happened when I was in kindergarten to 12th grade. Really, all my doubts and all these questions that I had come from lack of information and not having role models at the right time. So with my project, I'm developing this project called Beastimnista. Beastimnista seeks, or the goal is to teach science that is culturally relevant. So I want to help teachers improve their lessons, science lessons, by incorporating science policy, for example, by incorporating activities in their class where their students can see the applicability and the value of science or STEM activities in every single day, right? We use STEM during all our activities and every single day. So with Beastimnista, for example, I want to make sure that teachers bring problems or that they are aware of the environment that where those students are. So problems that are affecting the communities of those students or the families of those students, and how they can use the science that they're learning in class to improve or solve those problems. So I'm helping teachers by providing them tools to get more professional development, letting them know how they can teach this culturally relevant way, and also helping the students to be more aware of the opportunities that are out there. There are female scientists, there are Puerto Rican scientists in the backyard. So collaboration is really important, and the inclusion of science policy as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Drs. Cho, Dehayem, and Martinez-Orengo for sharing your STEM stories with us today. It was great to hear about your diverse backgrounds. I'd love to move us to the Q&A portion of our webinar. Reminder to everyone to please submit your questions using the Q&A function on Zoom. The first question I would like to ask you all is, to what extent do you think early exposure before undergrad to STEM fields is important in getting women interested and involved in STEM?
I can start with that. Absolutely, that was one of my problems, right? That I never had that specific physically present role model, or even people telling me, like I never had someone say, listen, there's a thing called PhD. It's a degree that you can get, to become a scientist. You as a female can become a scientist. Look at this person with name, right? This person, contact this person, talk to her. So absolutely, as soon as kindergarten or before, or with TV shows, whatever it is, we need to expose our kids and the community in general to STEM activities.
I agree with you. I mean, for me, it wasn't until I read about Dr. Corey Bargman in Vogue when I was in college that I actually had a female scientist who I wanted to be like when I grew up. A follow-up question for each of you is, who is your STEM role model? I've just told you about mine. And how has this person shaped your career and path?
Can I go? Well, my high school teacher who introduced me to physics and taught me for 2 years in high school and convey his passion and love for physics to me is my hero, because he really encouraged me, and for 2 years he nurtured my interest in physics. And I also want to say that early exposure and support matters, because I had that teacher who believed in me, who pushed me, but other teachers in high school did the same thing. My classmate, my parents, I come from a family of 10 siblings, and we are STEM lovers. So my parents encourage boys and girls equally to do what they like. And this self-confidence that was built early on in life really helped me to navigate all the obstacles that women in STEM go through in their career.
So I'm really glad that this question was asked, because my undergraduate mentor completely changed the trajectory of my life. So growing up, even though I came from a tight-knit Asian community, and there's this assumption that Asians always perform really well, we're all in STEM. It's actually not true. That Asians are not a monolith. Like my parents, neither of them went to college, so they were working class. I had never heard of a scientist. Like I didn't know a scientist. I didn't know somebody with a PhD. And none of my actual classmates or friends did as a kid. So I didn't really have like a role model to lead me to science. I just happened to kind of do science like in college. And as I mentioned earlier in my introduction, I had to work while going to college, and that really hurt my grades. And so I knew that my options were quite limited, because if you want to go to grad school or medical school or any school, you need to have a good GPA. And I didn't think I had a chance. And one of the jobs I had was a barista at a local coffee shop right by my undergrad at UCLA. And I was introduced through that coffee shop to Dr. Sherilyn Gordon-Burroughs, who was one of 3 female transplant surgeons at the time. She was the only Black female or Black surgeon in the Department of Transplant Surgery at the time. And she, regardless of my grades and what I looked like on paper, gave me an opportunity to do research with her. And that completely changed the direction of my life. She gave me this opportunity. She told me I had potential. She understood why I had to work. She understood the distractions that were there that weren't necessarily due to my incompetencies, but because of circumstances that were out of my control. And she inspired me and motivated me to apply to grad school and go to grad school. And until her death, she maintained contact with me throughout the years of graduate school, checking in, making sure I was okay, really being my advocate and my support system, and, telling me that I was good enough. And so, she completely changed my life, and she's my inspiration and why I want to help other students achieve their biggest potential, but also give them, a cheerleader, that's going to say, hey, you got this, you can do this, I believe in you, because sometimes that's all you really need. And so I think early exposure is really important. But even if you don't have that early exposure, if you meet the right mentor and you meet somebody who's willing to show you what you can do, it's going to change your life. And I think in STEM and STEAM, there needs to be people who not only, give career advice, but people who truly advocate and support you and are there throughout your career because, they have vested interest in your success. And so I have to thank her for where I am right now.
I agree, and it's hard to mention just one person, but for me, in terms of science and my career path, my mentors, definitely, even if it's just one. But like Dr. Shaw just said, if that's the right mentor, the right person who advocates for you, you're going to be unstoppable. Like for me, that teacher in high school who gave me that application, the same thing when I was in undergrad, that one professor who believed that I had some potential, who gave me an application to this NIH program, which sometimes, people tell you NIH or these big institutions where all the panelists are, I'm not going to make it. I'll never be there. You see it so far and so impossible. And these people believe in you. It's incredible, right? How those other people believe in you. And then when I was in grad school, my mentor, Dr. Richard Noel, he was always advocating for me, always gave me the opportunity for me to make mistakes, to learn from those mistakes, right? And also, things happen in your personal life. For me, also, I lost my grandmother during that process of getting my PhD. And of course, you need time for that, be someone who understands your needs, your priorities, your culture. So absolutely, mentors for me are key. And actually, currently now as a postdoc, my mentor, Dr. Hamoud as well, which is helping me navigate into a different field because now, although the lab I'm working at, they do infectious diseases, they study infectious diseases, but the main point there or field is radiology, which is something totally new for me. I suffered a lot of imposter syndrome when I started because it was a new field, right? Also because I'm a female and I couldn't see like a lot of females, especially in higher positions, what I do next, all these questions, mentors have absolutely helped me.
Thank you. We have a question from the audience. How can I effectively reach out, support, and mentor young women of diverse ethnic backgrounds? Could you maybe speak to your experiences as both a mentor and a mentee?
Yes, I can. Can I go? I think my experience, first, I want to start by share my experience as a mentor. I think I love being a mentor, and it is so fulfilling to give back, but it's also fulfilling to learn from my mentee. And I think, as the other panelists said, as a mentor, you are there to advise. You're there to look for opportunity for your mentee. You are there to build their confidence, especially for my female mentee. And you are not a person who has solution to all the problems. Sometimes you don't have any solution to any of the problems that they bring, but you are that support that they need. And as a mentee, I will say that for a long time in my career, I didn't have a mentor. When I finished my PhD, I was like an orphan in the field of science. I didn't have anyone to talk to. I didn't have anyone to even share my experience. I felt isolated for many years. And it is through outreach that I met incredible women that are now my mentor. And as a mentee, I think I feel safe that I have someone I can talk to. I have someone I can reach out to whenever I need someone who can give me constructive feedback. Because, a fight to, overcome obstacles and thrive in the STEM career it's not a fight that you can fight alone. You need people to fight with you. You need your mentors, and then you need a network, you need a community, you need a cohort.
I want to add to that. So I think all of us have very unique experiences, but we have shared emotions. I think everyone at some point knows what it feels like to be overwhelmed, to feel like you're not doing what you can, or excited. Every emotion under the sun. I think all humans experience the same emotions. And so I think as a mentor, you might not relate to their experience, and you might not know exactly what they're going through, but you can empathize emotionally. And I think that does a lot. I think as a mentee, when I feel like my mentor understands at least how I'm feeling, understands that, hey, I'm overwhelmed. Do you know what that's like? It's like, of course I know what it's like to be overwhelmed. Let's share. And I think that creates a space for conversation. And even if you don't have all the solutions, what you're doing is you're providing your mentee this space and this connection with you so that they can trust you and open up and talk about the issues that might be preventing them from performing at their best. I think that's probably the most realistic advice I would give to anyone when just communicating with others is you don't have to necessarily understand that person's background or their actual issue, but you can understand and empathize with what they're feeling. And I think that does a lot. And so at least for me, I'm still quite young in my career, so I haven't had an opportunity to mentor so many people. And I hope I can mentor people in the future. But my goal is to create a level of understanding, of like humbling myself so that I can at least relate emotionally with my mentee. And I think that helps a lot.
Thank you. I have another question that was also taken from the audience. What, according to you, are big barriers for first-generation students to get into STEM, and what can be done to overcome them?
Can I take that one? So I think one of the biggest difficulties starts in high school. If you're first generation, your parents will not know how to apply to college, definitely not know how to apply for financial aid, and they won't know that there's all these little intricate details about applying to college that first generations don't know at all. So for example, a lot of the Ivy Leagues have admissions counselors that are dedicated to specific regions in the country, and where you live will decide who that admissions counselor is. And if you contact that person, they will know who you are. They will recognize your name when you apply, and that improves your chances. That's information that most first generations are not privy to. Most first generation students won't know how to fill out a FAFSA form, won't know the difference between a Pell Grant versus a loan with interest. And those are pieces of information that are critical for entry into STEM and STEAM, but also retention. Same thing goes for graduate school. If you don't have a family member who's gone to graduate school, you won't know what programs are available to you, which are free, which are not. You won't know, if you're eligible or you're not eligible. Same goes for summer research programs. I mean, I can just go on and on and on. So I think what we need to do for first generation low income is provide, not functional, but actionable or realistic workshops. So for high school seniors or juniors ready to go to college, a seminar or workshop where they're physically helping you fill out a FAFSA form, where your counselors are just saying, yeah, apply to college, but here are the colleges, here are admissions counselors who you should contact, right? And I think there has to be like realistic, real help, not just, you can do it, but these are the actual steps. These are the forms you need to fill, okay? And if you need help filling them, I will help you do it. And I think that will definitely bridge the gap between first generation students and those who are not first generation.
I would like to add something quick there. That's why I also think that like Bistimnista, my program, making science culturally relevant. It's not just you as a student or someone who wants to become a scientist, it's your family as well. Like in my case, none of them knew about PhD or scientists. So they knew that if I like science, I was going to become a doctor in medicine, right? And then I had these few teachers who actually they took action. They gave me a form to apply to these programs. So absolutely, it's a matter of education, action, and policy making.
Thank you. We have another question. What advice do you have for females who are seeking a leadership position and want to progress or negotiate in the STEM sector?
I can take that one. I think the first advice I will give a female is first work on your self-confidence, because there is a huge confidence gap between young men and young women. And when you work on your confidence, self-confidence, you're confident about your ability, you also need to, and this is not easy to do, because we always tell women you need to advocate for yourself, but it's more easier for women to advocate for others than to advocate for themselves. And about negotiation, you can learn. There are a professional development on how to negotiate, and one of the workshop that we give for women who participate in the Women in STEM Leadership program is, how do you negotiate? How can you prepare for a negotiation? How do you navigate difficult conversation? So I think there is a way you can really learn how to do these things, and practice and link up with people who can really help you, people who understand you and can support your growth in those areas. I think it's extremely important.
Can I jump in on that? So I think in my early stage of my career, I haven't had too many opportunities for negotiation, but I have spoken to my peers and have been in situations where I have to negotiate, either pay or position. And what I've learned is that you need to start with knowing your worth, right? Knowing your self-worth, knowing what your work and your experience is. And as Alex said, being confident in that. That doesn't mean you have to be arrogant or delusional. I think there's like a very fine line there. I think knowing what you have to offer, knowing what you bring to the table is critical when you walk into a room to negotiate, because you want that other person to know what you're worth and know that you can also walk away. I think that's really hard for a lot of young people, because we're very early in our career and we want every opportunity under the sun, and we're afraid we're not going to get it. But I think the question we all have to ask ourselves is, do we want to be in an environment where they don't appreciate who we are? They don't appreciate what we have to offer, what we'll bring to the table. And I think that will help build that confidence when you know that you should be paid and you should be compensated for the work that you do. And you should be valued because you have something to bring to the table that's very unique to you. And so that is the advice I've received, and I hope I can implement that when it's time for me to negotiate my salary eventually when I move up the ranks. But I think it's really important to have the knowledge that if it's not good enough for you, you can also walk away.
Thank you all for this great information. The final question that we have time for today is, what is one piece of advice you have for other women who are or want to pursue a STEM-related career?
I can go there. I mean, I would say, don't feel less because you don't see someone similar to you, or you don't have that role model. You don't feel like you cannot do that or be there. Find the opportunity, and if it's not there, make it. Just make that opportunity for you. Make it happen. And then once you have certain roles, as if you become a mentor and if you have certain roles within the different STEM fields, pull more women with you, right? Give them that the opportunity, because talking about these topics and taking action is the only way things are going to change. I think yesterday, 315, we were celebrating the Equal Pay Day, right? That's an example. And what that does, it symbolizes how much more work women have to do in order to get earn the same amount that men get paid. But the way we can break with those past events or those challenges is by keep working on them. And sometimes it's going to take more time than you think, right? Sometimes you may take action and you get frustrated because you see that probably you won't get the benefit or you won't see the results. But eventually, just as we are celebrating Women's History Month, eventually future generations would receive those benefits. That's my advice.
If I can add on to that, I think if you are a woman in STEM, it's very important, above all what we said, to try and surround yourself with people, good people. Try and have a network, because a network is a place where you can inspire and you can be inspired. It's a place where support can be provided when needed. It's a place where professional collaboration can start and grow. It's a place where opportunities can be shared. It's a place where visibility can be provided, and it's a place where connection can be created. And all these are very, very important when you are starting your career as a woman in STEM.
And I think probably the most important lesson I learned throughout my training is learning how to ask for help. STEM as a job, it's hard. Science, engineering, technology, mathematics. It's not going to be easy. There are challenges. And sometimes you think by asking for help, you're showcasing your weaknesses or your inabilities. So that's not true. It's actually showing that you have a genuine desire to learn, and you're not recreating the wheel. You're not running the race alone. You're not creating more obstacles for yourself. I think being able to ask for help is a huge part of being in this world of STEM. And as Alex was saying, and as Naisha was saying about networking, about having peer groups, about creating the change yourself, all of that comes with the territory of seeking people out, right? And it's really scary. There's a lot of different types of personalities in STEM. Some of us are more introverted than others. Some of us are too extroverted for others. But if you can just go a little bit out of your own way and ask people for help, and ask people to be your friend or to be your mentor or to be your advocate, or even just technically asking for help. I think that's a really important way to stay in STEM and be, successful in STEM, is, asking for help when needed.
Definitely. Thank you all so much for joining today's webinar and sharing just all this incredible information and advice. I would love it if maybe everybody could drop some way of just how to contact you after this webinar, if it's your email, Twitter, LinkedIn profile, if you want to throw that in the chat. We'll also, this webinar definitely was recorded. It'll be posted online afterwards. And the one thing I'd love to say, kind of just in closing and thinking about everything that's gone on, is, and what we've spoken about, is really just kind of walking away from this, just with our heads really held high, and knowing that we ourselves are not only an advocate as a female, we are an advocate for ourselves, but we are also advocates for other females in STEM too. And so really carrying that just with pride and showing up for other females that we see who need our help is really incredible. And as we try to shift this culture away from a toxic bullying environment to something that really we're empowering everybody and anybody that we can. And something I think that I love this question that came up in the Q&A too, is how do we define success in STEM? And at this point in time, it's really up to us to define our own success, and success looks different for everyone. And so really have the courage to do what you can and define your own path. And do not be afraid, just like everybody has said here, do not be afraid to reach out to anybody, any other females or mentors and role models that you have, because somebody else has probably experienced a similar situation of what you're going through, and we're here to lift you up. And so awesome. I love just this free-flowing discussion that we've had. I really hope this continues to head on over to aldacenter.org/the link. Afterwards, there will be a whole post about this webinar. And I'd love to again thank our sponsor, the Kavli Foundation, for just making an environment for this conversation to happen and occur. Again, thank you to Dr. Naisha, Dr. Alix, and Dr. Christina and Alix for moderating today. And with that, I hope we have a great rest of our week and enjoy this month and get involved in conversations on Twitter. And we will touch base again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.